This morning, my feet hit the floor long before daylight. It was one of those weekends where we had two daughters' combined birthdays, and grandmother and granddad were coming over for the day. I really needed to get the laundry hanging on the line because there was a small chance of rain coming in this evening. When I hang my wash on the line, often I will reflect on the meaning of things. On this particular day, my thoughts were filled with reflections on how often a woman's touch influences her home. Believe it or not, when I was a child, I was very disorganized and extremely cluttery. I really did desire to be a good steward of my home, but it wasn't until I became a Christ follower that started to take shape in my life. I had to learn one thing at a time and master that before I was able to move on to the next thing. I found when I was faithful in the small areas, I was then able to manage and be a better steward of those that God had entrusted to me. So when I met my mother-in-law for the first time, I noticed how proper and polite she was. She always made her bed every morning, and she also wiped down the kitchen before she went to bed. The other thing I noticed right away was that she was a professional at setting a beautiful dining table. From the salad plate to the dessert plate to the soup bowl, everything had a place and it looked so inviting. I would ask her lots of questions in the beginning on how to set a table and where she learned all those things. I mean, she really could teach a class on proper etiquette. She explained a lot of those things that she learned were in her home economics class in high school. Now, of course, this was back in the 50s and 60s when they still taught sewing and baking and laundry and life planning and basic housekeeping and social etiquettes like, the proper greetings in person, maybe on the phone, and in letter writing. So, anytime grandmother comes over or we have company, I always think it's really fun to get with the kids and go around the landscape and cut the flowers that are next to the house or in the garden. That way, it just seems a little more inviting. I know when we go over to my in laws, my girls love her table setting. So I've really kind of embraced her. Um, just her gifting at hospitality. And I've just really appreciated that about her and something that I can pass on to my girls. Because both of our daughters' birthdays land near Independence Day weekend, I just chose the blue and white hydrangeas and I thought they would be perfect to decorate the table with. This time of year, it seems every day there are tons of vegetables that I need to gather and keep up on the produce. Otherwise, it tends to get away from me and I can become a little overwhelmed in the kitchen. These routines truly are some of my favorite parts of the day. When I can hang the wash early and I can pick produce before, 9 o'clock in the morning before it gets too hot, I feel very accomplished in that I'm already knocking 10 things off my list. So, with that said, the birthday with family was really special. You never know when the last time you're going to see someone. And it's really important to me to create an environment and special memories for the kids that they can share with their grandparents. So, after grandmother and granddad left, I thought it would be a fun evening to show you the garden progress. But the end of my day looked a lot different than the beginning of my day. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Heritage Homestead. My name is Natalie, and welcome to my garden. Today, I'm going to take you along with me just for a little bit, and we're going to plan out the next month. The reason why I do that is because it helps me know what to expect, what vegetables and fruits are coming on, what I'm getting ready to preserve and harvest in our kitchen. So I kind of make a monthly plan, and that's just because it's helpful for everyone to know what to expect.
All right, so you're going to hear some kids in the background, and that's just my life. We love it that way, but hopefully you can hear me. Also, we're going to do this as fast as possible because we live on a hill, so we can see storms coming in, and off way in the distance, I can see some thunderstorms coming, and it looks pretty dark. So on this side, though, it is sunny, and I think we can pull this off. So real quick here, in the last two beds, I don't know if you can see that, I have green beans growing, and this year I decided to only do 2 in the spring and 2 later on. I will be planting in August, and those will be ready in the fall. So that makes a total of 4. And the reason why I did that is because last year I had 6 in the spring, 6 in the fall, which equals 12 beds of green beans, which is an insane amount of canning. So I decided that since I had actually some green beans left on the shelf this year, that we would tone it down to a total of 4 beds. So the next is bell peppers and jalapenos and banana peppers, and we've got more bell in this same row with the jalapenos. So that's super exciting. I always love at least 2 beds, if not 4, and it looks like this year we just planted 2. I don't know if you can see this bed right here, but I've got several tomato plants in the back, and in the front I've got some lettuce bolting into seed, which was on purpose, and I will be harvesting that this probably this week sometime, Monday or Tuesday. So that will be all taken out except the tomatoes, and they will start to flourish a little more with the weeds gone. Probably didn't mention what day it is. It is the last day of June, and that is helpful to know for me in particular because I like to plan and know from year to year what is growing best, and some of that is just based on the weather. And this year we have had a lot of rain, so our tomatoes aren't doing great, but I am praying that we get a lot of sunshine soon, so all of these green tomatoes sitting on my vine is going to ripen up and be preserved. Okay, so the whole next row beside the tomatoes, peppers, and green beans are, the very back row is carrots. The next row is 6 tomato plants, and that's either Cherokee or Brandywine, which is my husband's favorite tomatoes, so we always grow those every year. And the next 2 beds are beets, and I think those are bull's blood, and they seem to do really well in our area, and they end up being my kids' favorite anyway. So I just, from year to year, I change where I plant them, and that is just consistent. The next bed, I don't know if you can see this one, but it is asparagus, which I have already harvested earlier this spring, and now it is just growing, but they won't reproduce late in the summer. Not here anyway, it just gets too hot. Okay, now we are at the 3rd row over, and this also has 5 beds. So the first row here is okra. The next is heirloom tomatoes. The next is tomatoes, and the back 2 beds are snap peas, I believe. And so actually this week I'm going to be pulling the snap peas because they're an early cold crop. I'm sorry. They're a cold crop, and so by the time June comes, they are completely ready to be pulled. Okay, this is where my garden starts at the door, and so I actually had to make 4 rows back instead of 5 because of the entrance. I just wanted that extra space to bring a wheelbarrow in or whatever I needed. So in these beds, again, they're heirloom tomatoes. It looks like Cherokee Purple is in the front. So they're pretty good size right now, and each plant has like anywhere from 10 to 7 tomatoes on them, which is really great. Some of them are orange, some of them are green. We've already gotten tomatoes, just not a ton, so that's exciting. And as you can tell, that storm line is coming really, really fast. So behind this is another row of tomatoes, another row. Yeah, so this whole row is Cherokee Purple, Brandywine, and let's go. Okay, so here is the heirloom corn that we have, and we've got broccoli with a lot of marigolds, which I need to be harvesting and pulling the rest of that broccoli because it's the end of June. I will replant in the fall. And these tomatoes are a little smaller. Don't judge me for my weeds. I weeded last week, and this is exactly what happens when it rains a lot, which it has. So these are all melons. So some of them are cantaloupe, some of them are, I'm sorry, I think honeydew. And that is these two beds right here. And right here are my onions, and I'm going to be harvesting those this week. And here is my cabbage next to the corn. And I've got squash and zucchini right here growing, and behind that is the blackberries. And the storm is coming. Okay, so that wild storm just came through, and after a 3-hour downpour, we are now looking at some destruction in the garden. We had over 80-mile-an-hour winds, which is very typical in the Midwest, all the way from spring to fall. Now, we do get some of those storms in the winter. They're just not as much. Typically, we don't get tornadic action at the end of June, but there is always that possibility. So I'm kind of glad that you saw some of the corn and the tomatoes beforehand, but I'm going to show you the destruction that even 80-mile-an-hour winds do. Now, all of my tomatoes are tied up, and it looks like a lot of the top branches, the wind damage just completely broke them. So I'm a little bummed about that, but the good news is that tomatoes can recover from that pretty quickly. I would say in another 4 or 5 days. Of course, after I fix them and tie them back up, hopefully they'll come out of it 4 or 5 days later and they'll start looking better. But the next couple of days, everything's going to look pretty bad. So let me just kind of re-show you where I left off before those big winds came in. Okay, here is the corn, and it is completely sideways. But the good news is corn typically recovers pretty quickly after a storm like this. So I'm going to hope for the best, not have any expectations. Cabbage is pretty hardy, so those look okay. But the onions don't look very good. But I do think in the next couple of days they'll perk back up, and it is time to harvest those anyway, so I am not too worried about what those look like. And the melons seem okay, except I looked over here, and in this section it just really got beat up pretty bad. So it doesn't look like anything's broken in this bed. It'll just have to recover in the next couple days. Right next to our onions is the cucumber bed, and behind that is the zucchini and butternut squash. I didn't mention the cucumbers because I think I was distracted with the wind coming in and trying to hurry to make this video, but at least I get to come out here tonight and clarify what is here. So no, squash does not grow up the trellis. Cucumbers are on both sides, and I could probably show you what the squash looks like. There's a butternut right there. I think actually some of my girls must have picked a few of the squashes. There's another butternut. That's what that looks like. But they picked this morning, so I think a lot of the squashes are gone, or at least in the refrigerator in the house. So yes, we have watermelon. I forgot about that. So my little guy planted watermelon this year, and that's going to be, right there's the plant right there. That's going to be his little garden this year. Well, the sun is coming out and it's peeking behind the clouds, so that means I've got a couple more hours where I can probably clean up some of this damage. But I wanted to show you real quick what our tomatoes did. Some of these are okay, and some of these just completely took away with the wind. So they broke in half. Some of them are just laying over, so I think that I can probably save most of them. If not, it's just a branch or two and they will recover. These actually look really good. They didn't look like they had too much damage. So these are the tallest tomatoes right now at the end of June, and they look fantastic, which as a gardener, it doesn't make any sense why the shorter tomatoes would break and the taller ones would look fantastic. So I'm just pleased at the same time, but it is kind of confusing. Okay, I don't know if you can see these carrots, but they are completely blown over sideways, which is okay. I do think that they will recover from that. It'll just be, again, another few days. Well, here are the beets, and they don't look too bad. They're a little blown over. My peppers look a little bit windblown, but that's okay. I think they are going to recover too, quite nicely. Some jalapenos. Those look okay. Yes, I'm well pleased with those. We're probably going to harvest some green beans starting this week, which is great. Looks like we have a lot of beans to pick tomorrow, but it looks like the wind damage actually was only on this backside, and thankfully not on that first bed. Okay, so this one is not too bad, but I'm going to go ahead and tie it up anyway because it is supposed to rain tomorrow, which is crazy because we've gotten so much rain. But all I take is this little tape, tie, green string. I have no idea what this is called. I can probably link that below for you if you're curious. I will use this to tie to something that I have already secured in the garden, and I will, as my tomato grows with the trellis, I will tie it up along the way because that is what you have to do with tomatoes, otherwise they will break. So I just tie it in a knot, and I do not tie it right next to any trellis or whatever you have for your tomatoes. You don't want to tie them right next to it. You want to do a loose tie so they have room to grow. I've got Jason back here. I don't know if you can see him, but he is back there cutting down a tree because we had one fall over the fence line, and oh my, it looks like it's a pretty good size one. So he'll probably be cutting this evening until it's super dark. We'll just be doing what we can and cleaning up the mess. Part of living in the Midwest. There are times where I have pulled this string way too short and then I regret it. So be very generous with this stuff because you will regret it if it's too short. I've done it a million times, and so from now on I'm going to do it a little bit longer. Okay, I'm going to go underneath these little branches that might break. So you want to secure them on a very thick branch. That way they'll do better. Well, as you can tell, the sun went down behind the clouds, so I'm going to wrap things up in the garden and get a few more things done before I have to go in the house. But Thank you so much for journeying with me, and what started out to be a fun little garden tour for the end of June turned out to be an unexpected small little tornado. So at least you could see what it's like living in the Midwest just a little bit. And I didn't mention also, we have no power. So it was a pretty wild storm, and I think that tomorrow I probably will find more trees on the ground around the property. But right now, tonight, my focus is the garden and just cleaning up the rest of this mess in here. So thanks for coming along, chatting with me, going along on my journey, and we will see you next time.